This is XDefiant. We're here on Xbox Series X taking a look at the beta. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So what are we getting here? It looks like it's a 4K resolution, 60 FPS. I did play around with it on the kind of my TV and Xbox outputting 120 FPS. It does perhaps seem a little bit more fluid to a degree, but it seems to definitely, at least for now in this particular beta, be targeting 4K 60. It's a free-to-play game, so, you know, when it launches, it'll be completely free-to-play, and obviously with this being a beta, it is a work in progress, so, you know, things are definitely subject to change, but it does seem to have a healthy amount of content to it, and a decent selection of modes with 4 particular game modes that are all objective-oriented. Now, the servers have been not the best, and there is like a healthy amount of lag too, going around and shooting and stuff like that, but I think I've gotten a pretty good gist of what the game is like and what it hopes to offer. So, essentially what they've done is they've combined a bunch of the different Ubisoft franchises into one shooter game. So it's like Far Cry, Splinter Cell, we've got Watch Dogs, and there's a few different factions, you know, the Division team, the Phantoms from Ghost Recon, and nobody wants... Why is the Ubisoft Connect button in a in-game menu? It's so stupid, sorry. I clicked it accidentally way too many times. And like an expansive suite of like customization for like, you know, your guns, and you unlock more gun customization and skins and everything like that, and you know, it's intriguing so far, I've got to say. I'm like, the foundations of a pretty well put together shooter game are actually quite here. You know, like, it looks pretty good, fluidity wise, plays pretty well. The combat is a little too deadly almost. Like, I'm hoping they maybe adjust the time to kill slightly, as it does seem like some things, you know, like, especially with the lag, it's a little harder to tell, but like, you die, like, you just get eviscerated by guns. Like, you know, like, you die super quick on this one, to the point where it's like, you know, switching to your like firearm, your secondary, is not as effective as just like reloading your main gun and shooting, or you're basically dead anyways before that happens. But yeah, it's the time to kill seems a little too quick, personally, and the gameplay in general seems a little too fast. Because it's like, I feel like a little floaty, like people can't physically run this quickly. And, you know, when you think of like the different Ubisoft franchises included here, there's a lot of like really tactical ones. And I'm pretty sure this one had a bit of a Tom Clancy kind of like, you know, titling at some point. I mean, I think they've gotten rid of that, but you know what I mean? It's just... It feels like unnaturally quick. Like, it seems like they're definitely leaning a bit on, you know, like a Call of Duty-esque element, but I don't think it's quite as, like, tight and quite as weighted as, you know, Call of Duty games are. It definitely is kind of decent. Like, it's a solid shooter game. I think it's got a pretty good foundation here. I am really curious about it. I love the weighting on, you know, objective play. I do quite like that everything is an objective mode. And I think it bridges the gap of something that's, like, kind of serious, but also sort of, like, silly at the same time, if that makes sense. Like, it definitely is interesting in that regard, but it gets tiring, like, you know, seeing people look one way and shooting you another way, because either lag or something else going on. And there's also, like, the vibration needs to be redone too, I think, because it's like I literally don't feel getting shot until I've died. That could also be because you die so fast in this. But it's also like, it seems like I get more vibration from walking around than I do getting like shot at. It's really hard to judge your damage with a controller. And, you know, this is something I think if you've watched other reviews I've done, like, it's not something I normally ever really comment on. So it is something that is quite standing out into me in this game, is that it doesn't feel right when I'm running about. It's also crossplay enabled, so, you know, there is, you know, like mouse and keyboard kind of going up against you, and then there's a host of settings. You can change the FOV as well. So yeah, you see you got controller settings, but yeah, you're like, you know, going up against mouse and keyboard, and it seems like there is a setting to turn that off, as there usually is, but like it's just sort of like I need to get the advantage of the controller element of actually feeling, you know, the hits and stuff properly. Otherwise, it's impacting my reaction and stuff like that within this game. But I would say, visually, this is pretty nice looking, you know? Gameplay-wise, it seems to handle quite well. It's mostly the lag that seems to be the big detrimental element of the experience thus far, and, you know, it is a beta, so they are testing the servers and stuff. This is why we flight. But I like the combat. I like the game modes. There's like a really cool one where you're kind of like pushing objectives, sort of Overwatch-like, across some larger maps. I enjoy the tighter levels, you know, like domination and stuff like that. This is kind of, I think this one's like a hard point, right, with the rotating position around the map. And you know, they've got the 4 different modes that are all objective focused, which is fantastic, because, you know, there's one thing that should be left over from, you know, the Tom Clancy type style is the fact that they're tactical games, right? At least that's what I think of when I think of these series, is games with a tactical element to them, and having objective playlists is a big part of like kind of fulfilling that aspect of it. So the foundation here, I think, is actually really quite good from what I've played. It's just like, yeah, the lag and stuff is incredibly frustrating, because I can't tell if I'm like playing badly or if it's just like I don't even stand a chance, because, you know, people are like flying around in front of me and stuff like that, and that's just wild. And it takes like kind of a while to get some matches loaded, and, you know, again, like it's a beta. So I'm trying to give you like, you know, details and my thoughts on it, while also having to deal with, you know, certain problems and stuff like that. So we'll of course have different, I think for sure, like a different opinion to a degree when this launches, what the status of it will be when it, you know, fully releases. It should be interesting. But yeah, I think there is elements of like balancing for time to kill, and, you know, your speed and everything like that. I think that could be adjusted a little bit. But I think this one has some decent potential to it. Like I said, I think it's a pretty, you know, kind of solid game. It's got these fun abilities, and, you know, the combat is kind of interesting and engaging, and it has definitely, again, as a free-to-play, I think it's got that kind of potential to actually deliver something that might be intriguing for a lot of players. And if they do like a steady amount of content to this one to keep players hooked, this, you know, this could have a chance of actually carving itself out at least a little bit of a niche, I would say, industry-wise. And it's very interesting, because it sort of hits me as being something like, so there's this game called Gotham City Imposters. You might have heard of it. It was from like the 360 era. It was on PC. I think it became a free-to-play eventually as well there. But it was a game where you basically, it's just a regular shooter, but you cosplay. Essentially, you're cosplaying as like Batman as one team, Joker as another team. And that's kind of what this hits me, is a bunch of people dressed up as different characters from their favorite, like, Tom Clancy teams, and then went out and started shooting each other, is kind of what it is. Because it's like, you know, the concept of it is, it seems really, really silly. Like, look at all these deaths I've been getting. It's just terrible. But with the lag, I'm sure you've been seeing sometimes where people, like, literally flopping around, you get an idea of what I'm having to deal with, which is ridiculous. But, like, yeah, it sort of hits me as, like, the whole idea of this is just absolutely ridiculous and silly. But it also, like, looks mature enough where the combat is, like, you know, serious, and the gameplay is serious. So, I think they've balanced that kind of well. Like, it's something where I'm like, okay, I want to see what you're fully doing with this game. And I love how, like, detailed the environments are, too. Like, this map, really doesn't quite do it justice. Like, there's a lot in here, a lot going on, there's a lot of density within the environment, but like when you get to like some of the larger maps or some of the New York maps, it also really seems like they've just kind of ripped levels and areas from The Division. Because, you know, it is a combination of, you know, these various franchises from Ubisoft. But I'm assuming technology-wise, like, look, how are you supposed to shoot those guys? And they seem to be able to perfectly kill me. But on my screen, they're flying around. And it's not like I'm on some kind of weird wireless connection where I'm always laggy. Like, I don't have experiences like this on other games, so... Again, it's a beta, you know, I get frustrated because I'm trying to shoot and compete, and you get what I mean. But... Wow, that is, like, so... Like, I'm there and they're there. It's just, it's silly, but... Yeah, they've got me kind of like hooked a little bit, but I'm gonna have to sit back and be like, what is your, you know, what is the full end game of this one gonna be? The laggier it gets, the worse I do too, which really sucks. But yeah, it does kind of seem like they quickened development of this one by literally just ripping, you know, maps and areas from The Division in order to make stuff, which, you know, is fine. Like, if you played The Division, you're actually probably gonna feel like a lot of this is like kind of familiar, because even I was like going, oh my god, yeah, I know this, you know, this spot or this area and stuff like that. And you know, it definitely looks like the assets even pretty high quality, but you can also kind of be like, I think this was designed for something a little slightly different. Like, it works here though, you know, it does mesh. That's another hard thing about doing, you know, a game like this, a shooter like this, is you're combining things that typically, like, it's not even playable shooting these guys when it's lagging like that. You know, you're combining things that technically don't exist. Like, they're similar to a degree, but, you know, Far Cry is very different from Watch Dogs, is very different from Splinter Cell. So it is hard to find a balance where they all kind of mesh from a cohesive artistic standpoint with the person flying across the screen. That's hilarious. And we're gonna jump into the next match here. So yeah, it's interesting to see this cohesive mesh of all these different like IPs and actually see it working together. But I think this map like kind of even more clearly shows it off as being, you know, this is definitely using a lot of the core layout of like the Division series in order to, or it's leveraging or leaning on it in order to, I guess, more easily scale the game up so that they didn't have to like make fresh assets of everything, I guess you would say. At least that's what it really does come across, as most of the maps in this game are definitely like Division levels. Like, seriously, like most of them are. It's like, it's not a bad thing. There's actually like a really cool like Splinter Cell type level, like the home base thing is really neat. I'd actually say the level design for the maps overall is quite excellent. You know, they offer a variety of different like play spaces that are actually quite well detailed, with lots of different, you know, kind of areas and flanking routes, but they're also sort of like linear in their pathing, and it just, they flow quite well. And they do seem to handle spawning decently well too. I mean, if you get into a really bad situation, you know, you can get spawn killed here or there, but it doesn't seem to be to a degree that like gets overly frustrating. You do have options. So yeah, I think this actually seems to run overall quite well. They fixed the lag stuff for launch, which I'm expecting they will. You know, they keep a steady amount of content coming out. I think this one could certainly find itself a bit of a, you know, a niche that it could fit into in the shooter genre. I don't know if it's going to be like super disruptive from what I've played, but it's fun enough to keep me kind of going and mindlessly shooting for a bit. So I think that is great. And the clouds move, which is, you know, always a thumbs up for me when you can get the clouds moving, because, you know, apparently that's a really intensive, resource intensive feature to have, is clouds that actually do move around, which is nice. But yeah, I do like the play spaces. I'm hoping they play a little bit more with like the weathering though of some of the play spaces, because it is like, they're mostly sunny. Yeah, they're mostly sunny spots. And that is something I kind of like from some of the IP that they're using in this, is like, you know, sometimes they have like little darker spaces that they go into, you know, kind of like Splinter Cell. That's a big part of it. So it would be neat if they leaned on more variety for the maps. But, you know, they are completely different levels. But it is familiar spaces if having played The Division. Because, you know, you've got kind of this map, which, you know, crash plane, everything like that. There's an Emporium level, which is kind of a bit of like a mall interior to a degree. They've got, like, New York streets. They've got these larger maps, too. The larger maps are excellent. I really love, like, this one mode where you push like, you escort this, like, robot, and one of them's, like, this really, really well done, beautiful, like, amusement park, and they've even got, like, driver arcade machines, which is kind of funny, considering, you know, that franchise has been left alone for way too long. And, you know, then they've got, like, a zoo, and then there's also, like, this, also New York streets, but more of, like, the New York Metro, and, like, it's like Times Square, basically. And then there's a smaller level, which is like kind of like a rooftops map. That one works all right, but it's not my favorite map. But yeah, they've got some really interesting elements. This one, like I said, a healthy amount of content, which I do believe is very likely due to that ability for them to scale it quickly using existing content and kind of like adjusting it to fit the needs of the game, which is kind of smart, I would say, right? And I don't think the majority of people will really care that it feels kind of familiar, or they won't really notice. I do hope there's a bit more variation to, like, the abilities of characters, because it seems like people are either playing my character with the, you know, quick kill kind of night vision thing, or they're playing the Pyro, or the majority seem to be playing the Far Cry 6 lady, because she's got what equates to Juggernaut, where it, like, gives a big health boost. So, you know, I don't really see a lot of the other stuff being used, and I think that kind of goes to show that, you know, already people are like, you know, this is like a clear advantage to do this type of thing. So I think that might also need to be balanced out a bit more. So it's mostly about seeing them kind of balance this, fine-tune it, get it ready for full release, and I'm liking it. You know, it's fine. You know, it is actually fine with a healthy amount of content, and that is a little somewhat rare, I guess, or a little bit harder for shooter games or like live service games to really deliver on, is like a good amount of content, especially these types of games. Like, we see so many of these, like, kind of come and go, these types of games where it's like multiplayer focused, either it's a shooter or some kind of other variation on it, and, you know, there's a lot of games out there competing for player counts and stuff like that, and it's going to be very interesting to see the launch and then the long-term, you know, effects of this one. I mean, obviously, they've already got, like, a battle pass in here where you can earn 10 items that will carry over to the full game, but none of your progress or anything does. So if you didn't check out, you know, this beta, you're not missing out progression-wise. You're not going to fall behind. It's just some decorative stuff. But it gives you a little bit of a tease of where they're going for, like, microtransaction stuff. It's going to be battle pass, you know, fueled. They're probably going to have cosmetic stuff for, like, skins and all that, I would imagine. I don't think they'll have anything that, like, really kind of prevents you from getting anything, but I do ponder if maybe there might be some sort of, like, character styles or abilities that might kind of be part of that, since they show the Watchdogs area, but it's kind of, like, locked, if that makes sense. But that's just, you know, a little bit of speculation. I don't know. So, yeah. Looks good. Plays fine. Interesting experience. Don't really have too many complaints outside of the fact that, you know, there's really bad lag, which is a beta thing, you know, a beta thing, and matchmaking could be a little faster for getting the matches, like, loaded and going, as that does seem to take quite a while between, like, the vote and, you know, actually getting the match set up and all that. But, yeah, time to kill adjustments, maybe speed adjustments a little bit, but, have a good time. I think that's important too, is, you know, a shooter you can jump into and have enjoyment with it, and mess around, shoot some things, maybe team up with some others. Yeah.
Sector zone contested.